So the Orlando Magic must feel pretty awkward right now. They traded Victor Oladipo, a really good two-way athletic player who's killing it for OKC, as well as a first-round pick that turned into Sabonis, I think. I hope I'm not messing that one up. And they acquired Serge Ibaka on a one-year deal, hoping that he can be more of a veteran and shore up their front court and give them some athleticism, defense, and they can be a winning team. The Magic have kind of sucked this year. Not really Ibaka's fault, but it still has happened. And so now they're facing the reality of he's probably going to leave in free agency because you're not a good team, because he's got a one-year deal this season. So you probably want to trade for him, or you want to trade him, and get something for him. You're probably going to get like 80 cents on the dollar because anybody knows that, it's either you trade him or he leaves, so you want to get something back. And so we can talk about these Ibaka trade rumors and if he could end up somewhere. Can Ibaka make a real difference on a title contender? And the teams we're mainly going to be talking about here are the Houston Rockets and the Toronto Raptors, two teams that are towards the top of the NBA, who could definitely use a two-way player at the power forward position like Serge. If we look at Serge Ibaka just as a player first and foremost, from an offensive standpoint, 15 points a game, he shoots 49% from the field, 39% from three. So he's a pretty efficient scorer, but if we dive even deeper into it, Ibaka shoots 70% at the rim, 49% in the paint, 45% from mid-range, and then, like I mentioned, 39% from three. And he's also pretty athletic, so offensively, Ibaka can only make your offense better, if you ask me, because you can run pretty much any sort of play for him, whether it be a pick and roll, because he can go to the basket and he shoots 70% from there, or he does well inside the paint. You can also run a pick and pop, because he's a good mid-range shooter as well as three-point shooter, but you can also have him in off-ball action, in the sense of he screens for someone moving off-ball, and then maybe he'll take that opportunity to go to the basket on a cut, or he'll back up for a three-pointer. Some of the things that Golden State does with Draymond Green, for example. So Ibaka is very valuable as an offensive player. Also, because of that athleticism, he's good in the full court as well, because he can just run past everybody else, especially opposing big men. So, he's really versatile offensively. I think you can plop him into what you're doing, and he could just be a nice positive piece. You don't have to change your entire offensive scheme to fit him. So that's a good thing. I think it's a little opposed to Paul Millsap, who's also a power forward, who I guess is not on the trade block anymore. Ibaka's a better shooter than Millsap, so it might be a more seamless fit depending on the team he goes to. But now we have to talk about his defense, which of course has been Ibaka's calling card for a while. I'm going to admit, I haven't watched any Orlando Magic games this season. I've kept tabs on them, just looking at stats and things people say on Twitter, but in terms of actually watching their games, no, I haven't watched any. But some people that I do trust when it comes to their basketball opinions, Nate Duncan, Danny LaRoe, Zach Lowe, who watch every single game of every team, tell me that Ibaka's defense has regressed a little bit this season. Now, a big part of that could just be he's on a losing team, and I would like to think that if he ended up on a team like the Raptors or the Rockets, or hell, even the very exciting Miami Heat at the moment, perhaps his defense would come back and, defensively for OKC at his peak, he was very good as someone who can move around the floor well, get block shots, especially from the weak side, and just make your overall team better defensively. And also, if he ends up getting switched onto a guard or a small forward, he's not dead in the water either. So Ibaka has been a really strong defensive player in the past. I think that could come back. He still hasn't been bad this season or anything, but that could probably come back to what it was if he's on a winning team. And then what he does for you offensively is very good. So let's talk about a couple of the teams. And of course, I already mentioned two of them. Toronto Raptors, Houston Rockets, both seem to be in the running for Ibaka. Honestly, given that he's on the 1 year, I don't think it would take too much to really get him. I feel like if the Raptors wanted to get Millsap, it would take Terrence Ross and probably 2 first-round picks. I don't think the price for Ibaka is that high. I don't know what it is, but I don't think it's that high. So I think it'd be very possible for them to get him. And with Serge, if you put him in at the power forward position, for the Raptors. I think immediately the Kyle Lowry, Serge Ibaka two-man game could be very difficult to defend because they're both really good shooters. I mean, Kyle Lowry kind of makes a living on pulling up for jumpers in the pick and roll, and then Ibaka being someone who could shoot as well. I mean, if those two could really get their chemistry down when it comes to like handoffs and screens and whatever the hell else Dwayne Casey can think of that I can't, that could be a really tough duo to deal with. And then I think he could also help out DeMar DeRozan as well. DeRozan does a lot of one-on-one isolation stuff, and I think just having a screener like Ibaka could help that out, because if someone like a Pascal Siakam or a Valanciunas or pretty much any big man on that team besides Patrick Patterson is setting a screen for one of those guards, it's not the most difficult thing in the world to defend because those other guys can't shoot, besides Patterson, of course. Ibaka can definitely shoot. So I think he could make Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan, as well as Corey Joseph's days better. And I think they could actually make Ibaka's day better as well, because the majority of Ibaka's baskets for the Magic are assisted plays, as in like he gets open, someone gives him the ball, and then he shoots it. All of the playmakers on the Raptors are better than all the playmakers on the Magic, so that could actually be really good for him and the whole team around him. And then defensively, Toronto's been kind of a letdown this season, even if their offense has been fantastic, so hopefully Ibaka could make them better there. And I think he could just be a really good fit with them as far as what it would take to actually get him. And then if we look at how this relates to the other teams in the Eastern Conference for Toronto, the Cavaliers have Kevin Love as well as Channing Frye, two big men who are offensive pieces for them. Of course, Love does a lot more scoring, but they both can shoot, so you need a decent enough defensive power forward, which Ibaka can be. The Celtics have Al Horford and Jonas Jerebko and Olynyk, who are all good shooters, and in the case of Horford, can do pretty much everything offensively. So Ibaka would definitely help there. Markieff Morris has been very good for the Wizards lately. As a shooter and a versatile offensive player, Ibaka could help there. Thad Young has really surprised with his three-point shooting, and he's always a very good athlete for the Pacers, so there's a lot of really decent power forwards in the Eastern Conference that the Raptors are going to run into in the playoffs, so someone like Ibaka could help. And of course, there is Paul Millsap with the Hawks, who is probably the best player out of everybody I just mentioned. So it would make a lot of sense for the Raptors to get him. I think he would fit in well, and I don't think it would cost too much for it to really happen. The other team is the Houston Rockets, and I did talk about Paul Millsap with the Rockets not too long ago. And the one thing I was concerned with is, like, Millsap's not a great three-point shooter, and the Rockets love to shoot threes, of course. So Ibaka could end up being a better fit for them, because he's someone who can be really good from three. I mean, he's shooting 39% this season. And I think from an offensive standpoint, like, he could just kind of insert himself into what Ryan Anderson already does. Of course, Ryan Anderson will not be traded in this move. I think the move could be like Sam Decker or Montrezl Harrell and a first-round pick. Maybe less than that, I don't know. And then you end up with Serge Ibaka. And I mean, he's not as good of a three-point shooter as Ryan Anderson, but he's not far off either. And then defensively, he's worlds better than Anderson. So I think he could take a Rockets team that's already like pretty mid-tier on defense and perhaps elevate them even higher to being maybe even a top 10 defense. I mean, they're 13th in defensive rating right now, which I have no idea how the hell they're doing it, but congrats. And then, of course, they're the second best offensive team in the league. I mean, if you could be the second or potentially best offensive team in the league and then a top 10 defense, you're a scary team, like, no doubt about it. And I also think, given that Houston runs a lot, they have the third highest pace in the NBA. Ibaka would fit into that beautifully. He's a very athletic four who can run in a straight line very well. So I think he would be a fantastic fit. As far as like what the Rockets do, X's and O's in the half court, I mean, it's James Harden pick and rolls. And Ibaka would definitely be very good there. He'll gladly take as many three-pointers as they've been taking. And then I also think if he ends up playing with Eric Gordon on the second unit, they'd be very good there as well. So I think he would be an awesome fit with Houston. And then if we look at how he would help them against the other teams in the West, I mean, against Golden State, you basically need guys like Ibaka, guys who can switch, play multiple positions defensively, be good athletically, and then be able to shoot on the other end so the Warriors' defense is spread out. So that'd be the exact type of guy that the Warriors would not want to see on the Rockets. And then in the case of the Spurs, I mean, they couldn't handle Oklahoma City's athleticism last season with Tim Duncan still on the team, and Serge Ibaka was definitely a part of that. So now you have Pau Gasol and LaMarcus Aldridge trying to deal with Ibaka in the open floor and rolling to the rim. I think they could definitely have some trouble with that one, so it would just make the Rockets more athletic, especially up front, which is San Antonio's one weakness. If we look at a team like the Utah Jazz, I think Derek Favors, who's a very good defensive power forward when he's healthy, would be spread out to the three-point line defending Ibaka a lot, which would just make them a little worse defensively. You still got to deal with Rudy Gobert in the paint, which good luck with that one, but it does make the Jazz just a tad bit worse on defense, which is always a good thing because they're a very good defensive team. I think the same thing could kind of be said for the Memphis Grizzlies because, if you have a Zebo-Serge Ibaka matchup, Zebo could have some trouble dealing with Ibaka. Of course, Ibaka is then going to have to deal with Zebo putting an elbow in his chest on the other end, but I do think you could make a nice mismatch for yourself there. Now, of course, JaMychal Green would have a much easier time defending Ibaka, but that does mean more time that Randolph could potentially just not be a viable defensive piece. And then if we talk about the Los Angeles Clippers, I mean, Blake Griffin and DeAndre would match and probably surpass Ibaka's athleticism, and I think they wouldn't get killed in terms of what he can do offensively. However, a trade for Serge, while hopefully not having to give up too much because he's on a one-year deal and the Magic want to go rebuild mode, that would just make the Rockets even deeper of a team, and they're already pretty deep with the way they use Eric Gordon as the sixth man with Patrick Beverley. And I mean, the Rockets have about 9 players who are playing above 15 minutes a game and are playing well, and of course the Clippers' weakness is their depth. So if you added Serge Ibaka to what the Rockets are already doing, and you could just constantly have like 2 to 3 or 4, or perhaps all 5 guys on the floor constantly being quality players, that's going to be really tough for the Clippers to deal with when, after you get past their top 4 of CP3, Redick, Blake Griffin, and DeAndre, there's a decent drop-off there. So I think between the Rockets and the Raptors, those should be one of the 2 teams he ends up on. I would definitely be calling the Magic and seeing what I could get if I was the GM of one of those 2 teams. I've heard about the Miami Heat. They've been emerging lately. They've been a team who plays really, really hard. They basically drive and kick like crazy people, and they constantly keep the ball moving, and they have a lot of three-point shooters, so it works out for them. I mean, if you had Ibaka next to Whiteside with Goran Dragic at the point, I could see something there. Now, do you end up with a draft pick? No, well, you still end up with a pick, of course, but it's not going to be as high, but who knows, maybe Miami has a real thing going on here. I've also seen the Celtics. I think a move like that, it could put them over the Raptors, maybe. It still doesn't give them a chance against the Cavaliers, and it still doesn't solve their rebounding problems, so I don't think the Celtics should really go out of their way to get Serge Ibaka. So yeah, I think Ibaka can be very good as a two-way player. I think there are some teams that could definitely use him, and that's it.